Okay. Good evening. This is Ann Master, and today we're going to be talking about the reproductive system. And of course, the reproductive system is there to make new humans. So the organs of the reproductive system, they nurture the sex cells. Sex cells are the sperm for males. And for females, they're the egg or oocytes. Also, you're going to have organs to transport them to sites of fertilization and areas where the fertilized egg can become human. This is, of course, in the female. The sex cells, the sperm and the egg, have 23 chromosomes, and that is half of the chromosomes needed to make a new individual. The special cell division that creates sperm or egg is called meiosis. Okay, what this graph is showing you, or this table, is meiosis. We start here. Is how the female makes the egg and the male makes the sperm. They come together and are fertilized in the uterine tube. That forms a zygote, and should that zygote make it to the uterus and embed via mitosis, you'll have a new individual. All right, but we're not going to discuss mitosis anymore. That was an AP1 topic. What we're going to be talking about more is meiosis. And meiosis, the reason why you make 23 chromosomes from a 46 chromosome individual is because there are two nuclear divisions. You have meiosis 1 and the second is meiosis 2. As with all cell division, the chromosomes replicate. Chromosomes are chromatids connected by a centromere. In meiosis 1, the homologous pairs, in other words, chromosome 1 from your father and chromosome 1 for your mother, all separate. And after meiosis 1, you have haploid, meaning you only have half the genetic material. And then these chromosomes will split again in meiosis 2, and you will have 4 cells with 23 chromosomes. This might help visualize it better. Again, you'll recognize prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase from mitosis. But in meiosis, there's the first division. Notice the homologous pairs. They tend to be the same size, and they come together via hydrogen bonding. Will split in anaphase. And now, in telophase 1, you'll see 2 cells form. Each of these 2 cells will undergo a second division. This is the one that looks most like mitosis. Again, you have the same 4 steps, just you have the Roman numeral 2 afterwards. So in metaphase 2, they line up. And then in anaphase 2, the sister chromatids, each arm of the chromosome, separate. And now you have 4 haploid cells. And these cells tend to be genetically unique through processes such as crossing over, which I'm not going to cover in this lecture tonight. Okay, and that's the extent we're going to cover meiosis this evening. What we're going to talk about now are the male reproductive system. So we're going to talk about the organs and the hormones that regulate it. And as soon as I get my cursor here, we'll get started. The primary sex organs are the gonads. And the gonads, the male gonads, are the testes, and they produce the sperm, which is also called spermatozoa. And in the testes, in addition to producing sperm, the male sex hormones, or androgens, testosterone primarily, is formed. The other structures, which are necessary to transport that sperm are called the accessory sex organs. And males have an internal and external set. So the next slide. Well, we'll start with the gonads here, which are here, which is the testes, and these have all been, you're seeing half, and I'm trying to think of the proper anatomical term, the sagittal section. So here are the testes. Sitting on top of the testes is a structure called the epididymis. This is where sperm are going to mature. Again, sperm and testosterone are made here. The sperm are stored here until ejaculation, and they follow this tube here. It's called the ductus deferens or vas deferens. This is what's severed when a male has a vasectomy. Okay, the ductus deferens travels around the bladder, and it's going to join up through the urethra. First, there's going to be a couple of glands that are going to help create semen, which is the substance around the sperm. You have the seminal vesicles. This is the prostate. And here is the bulbourethral gland. Again, these are all contributing to the sperm, and these are all internal. And as the sperm travels down the urethra, and once it enters the penile urethra, then it is external, and it exits out during climax. Okay. What I'm showing you here is how sperm cells are formed. You go from a primary spermatocyte, which has 46 chromosomes. It undergoes 2 divisions, again, meiosis, and it creates 4 sperm cells. This is different than the female sex cells, which we'll talk about here shortly. Now, primarily when you think hormones and reproduction, you think female, but males are regulated by the same hormones, or some of the same hormones as females. And we have some old friends here. The hypothalamus is regulated by hormones, pituitary gland, and of course the testes. And these hormones are going to maintain sperm cell production and maintain the development and maintenance of male sexual characteristics, such as facial hair and a narrower waist and things that we associate with males. All right, so the hypothalamic and pituitary hormones, again, this is a lovely hormonal cascade. The hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin releasing hormone. Then the anterior pituitary secretes gonadotropins, and from now on these will be called luteinizing hormone, LH, and follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. LH causes the testes to produce hormones, particularly testosterone. FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, causes the testes to produce, or to respond to the testosterone. And by responding to both LH and FSH, the testes will produce sperm via spermatogenesis. The male sex hormones are called androgens, and chiefly among those is testosterone. And after fetal development, it continues and stops after birth, and then it kicks back in puberty, and you start secreting testosterone throughout the life of the male. What does testosterone do to the male body at birth? It helps develop the male reproductive organs. Descent of the testes into the scrotum. The scrotum is the sac that houses the testes. Again, the testes and the scrotum are external male genitalia. During puberty, you have an enlargement of the testes. This is the primary sex characteristic. The secondary sex characteristics include body hair, enlargement of the larynx and thickening of the vocal cords, hence a deeper voice, increased muscles, increased bone mass. Again, characteristics we associate with males. And here we have our friend, the negative feedback loop. So again, the hypothalamus controls the release of the anterior pituitary gland via gonadotropin releasing hormone. The anterior pituitary gland secretes FSH and LSH into the bloodstream. They travel through the bloodstream to cause the testes to release testosterone and other androgens. We're going to talk about inhibin. Inhibin kind of does what you think it would. Inhibin inhibits follicle stimulating and luteinizing hormone, hence leading to our negative feedback. So once we have inhibin, testosterone, and other androgens, they negatively feed back upon the hypothalamus, and it stops releasing the gonadotropin releasing hormone, so it stops the cycle. Okay, now we're going to talk about the organs of the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system produces egg cells, oocytes, also produces sex hormones, but here we have organs for the development of offspring. The primary sex organs, the gonads, are the ovaries, and then there are sets of external and internal reproductive organs, and that's our next slide. So we'll start with the gonads, just like we did with the males. Here are the ovaries. Again, this is a sagittal section, so you only see one half. Here are the uterine tubes, also known as the fallopian tubes. These are fimbria that are going to catch the egg during ovulation when it's released from the ovary. The uterine tube is where fertilization might occur. This is also cut if a woman has her tubes tied. Here's the uterus. This is where the fertilized egg must implant. The opening of the uterus is called the cervix. This is what is tested with pap smears. Here's the vagina. Okay, we're now leaving the internal, and we're going toward the external. What you see primarily in female external genitalia are the labium. Labium means folds, so you have the major fold and the minor one, more interior. And not to forget the clitoris. This is the site of female satisfaction. Oogenesis is the process of egg formation. Again, to make an egg, a meiosis is going to occur, but in females, meiosis occurs in different parts of the female's life. Beginning at puberty, so the female, when she undergoes puberty, some primary oocytes continue meiosis 1. In other words, a woman is born with all the eggs she will ever produce, and these eggs start developing at puberty. Here, division stops. And in addition to the division, does produce one primary oocyte. This will divide again and become the egg. However, there's a smaller polar body. This is genetic material, and this is reabsorbed by the woman's body. The secondary, the oocyte will undergo meiosis 2 only at fertilization. And it also creates a second polar body. And when fertilization is complete, you have the zygote, and the zygote is the fertilized egg. Okay, so oogenesis is the formation of the egg. You have the primary oocyte, then it undergoes one mitotic division, and this is around puberty. So then it creates a polar body, and this polar body is going to be reabsorbed. Here you have the secondary oocyte, and once fertilization occurs, then there undergoes a second meiotic division, and then you get the zygote. One set of 23 chromosomes from the female. The second set of 23 chromosomes becomes a polar body, and that is reabsorbed. And it's only after the second meiotic division that the sperm and egg nucleus come together to form the zygote. Now we're still going to be talking about what's happening in the ovaries, but we're going to be talking about the tissue around the oocyte. This is called the follicle. Follicle, again, you have primary follicles. Primary follicles are referring to the oocyte plus the tissue around it. And every cycle, 20 follicles may begin to mature, but during that time, only one will become dominant. In other words, only one will be ovulated, typically. And the others will degenerate. Okay. So here in this chart, we have ovulation, the cycle of ovulation, or what's occurring in the ovaries. Here are the follicles. These are going to become the oocytes. And the oocyte is here, but the cells here around it are the follicular cells. One of the follicles becomes dominant, gets larger and larger. Then ovulation occurs. In other words, the follicle remains here, and it will become what's called the corpus luteum. And this is very important in hormonal regulation. And the oocyte will be released into the fimbria of the fallopian tubes, or the uterine tubes. Okay, now let's talk about hormonal control. And again, female reproductive hormones begin with the hypothalamus, the anterior pituitary, and of course then we have the ovaries. And these are all responsible for the female sex hormones and the female sexual characteristics. Okay. Now, the female reproductive system, two things are occurring at once. One, you have the ovarian cycle. So this is the maturation and the release of the oocyte for ovulation. And we've kind of briefly covered that. The second place where changes are occurring, and that's being governed by hormones, is the uterine or menstrual cycle. The uterine cycle, the uterus is changing in order to potentially house the new zygotes. And we're going to talk about this in a moment. We'll talk about both phases, but I believe we're going to start with the ovarian cycle first. First, overall, let's talk about the hormones. Gonadotropin-releasing hormone, released by the hypothalamus, and it controls both the ovarian and uterine cycle. It controls them by causing the anterior pituitary to release FSH and luteinizing hormone. Okay, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, initiates follicular growth, and it causes the follicles to secrete estrogen. Estrogen is the primary female hormone. Luteinizing hormone also stimulates the follicles to secrete estrogens. It also triggers ovulation and promotes the formation of the corpus luteum. This is the byproduct of ovulation. And the corpus luteum is going to produce hormones such as estrogen, progesterone, the other important female hormone, relaxin, and inhibin. We'll discuss relaxin in a moment. Okay, let's discuss estrogen now. Estrogens are secreted by the follicles, promotes female reproductive structures and secondary sex characteristics like widening of hips and things like that. Can increase anabolism, lower cholesterol, and like the male reproductive cycle, the ovarian hormones are going to inhibit gonadotropin hormone and the luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone. Progesterone is mainly secreted by the corpus luteum. This is more for development of the zygote. So it's going to help maintain the endometrium, and also it's going to prep the mammary glands for milk production. And it does inhibit the other anterior pituitary and hypothalamic hormones. And here we have our beautiful negative feedback loop. So hypothalamus, gonadotropin releasing hormone in the bloodstream that signals the anterior pituitary to release follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone into the bloodstream. They travel to the ovaries. They produce estrogens, and estrogens, in addition to causing the negative feedback, also cause here the secondary sex characteristics, breast development, skin changes, and things like that. Excuse me. Now we'll talk about relaxin. Relaxin is produced by the corpus luteum, and it relaxes the uterus, inhibiting contractions of the myometrium. So it keeps the uterus still. And at the end of pregnancy, it also increases flexibility in the pubic symphysis, so it can enlarge so the pelvic brim can enlarge and help the baby pass through. And it dilates the cervix. And then inhibin, just like in males, inhibits the secretion of follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Okay. Now the female reproductive cycle is different from males. We might say it's a monthly cycle, whereas males do not quite have this. But the cycle begins around age 13. That's with the first period or menences, and continues until menopause, late 40s, early 50s. And the phases of the reproductive cycle vary from female to female. But your text kind of assumes 28 days. Not everyone follows the 28-day cycle, but for to make this a little bit easier, we'll discuss the 28-day cycle. So the first part of the reproductive cycle is the menstrual phase. The second part is the pre-ovulatory phase, ovulation, and you have the post-ovulatory phase. These are referring to both events in the uterus and events in the ovaries and how they occur at the same time. Okay, so the first day of your cycle begins the first day of your period, or monthly visitor, however you like to refer to it. And it's roughly the first 5 days of your cycle, how long your period lasts. In the ovaries, follicle-stimulating hormone is going to cause primordial follicles to begin to develop and soon you'll get one dominant follicle. In the uterus, what you're discharging isn't all blood. What it is, it's the lining called the endometrium. Because the part of the endometrium called the functionalis is being deprived of oxygen and dying off, and so it is leaving, and leaving only the stratum basalis. And this is the part of the endometrium that will grow back. Just like in your skin, you had the basal layer of skin, and it is the part where growth occurred. The pre-ovulatory phase, this is the one that varies the most in length, but for the purposes of this lecture, it's days 16 through 13. In the ovaries, some of the secondary follicles are beginning to increase in size, and they're going to start secreting estrogen and inhibin. And one dominant follicle will outgrow all others. And estrogen and inhibin will cause the other follicles to stop growing. And if two follicles are released at the same time, if you have two dominant follicles, such as one in the right ovary and one in the left, yeah, it could potentially result in non-identical twins or fraternal twins. Okay. So you're getting in the ovarian phase a dominant follicle. And in the uterus, you're getting repair of the endometrium. So the basal cells are undergoing mitosis and forming a new functional layer, stratum functionalis. So the endometrium starts to double, so it begins to thicken. Now we have ovulation, and it's roughly the midpoint of your cycle. But again, it varies in all females. So, but for the sake of this lecture, we'll say day 14. And basically, ovulation is marked by a surge of estrogen and luteinizing hormone. Okay. And most contraceptives try to block this surge of luteinizing hormone in order to block ovulation. Not all contraceptives, but some. Now, the post-ovulatory phase is afterwards. Lasts for the last 2 weeks. In the ovary, after ovulation, you're going to see formation of the corpus luteum, and hormones are going to start being made, particularly progesterone, estrogen, relaxin, and inhibin. Let's talk a little bit more about the corpus luteum. It's very important. Again, this is the aftermath of the follicles. If the oocyte's not fertilized, the corpus luteum will last for 2 weeks, and it becomes a corpus albicans, which means white body. Well, albicans means white, corpus means body. Okay, and then if the corpus albicans forms, then your hypothalamus and anterior pituitary begin making their hormones. If the oocyte is fertilized, the corpus luteum lasts several weeks, and it could last to the end of the first trimester. Human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, this HCG, excuse me, this is what pregnancy tests test for. Okay, in the uterus, what's occurring? The endometrium is still growing and keeps getting thicker. And after 1 week after ovulation, is when the potential fertilized egg could arrive in the uterus, and it will implant into the endometrium. However, if not, then menstruation will occur and your cycle will begin again. So you'll lose your endometrial lining and start all over again. This slide kind of puts it all together. Puts together the release of the hormones from the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary with what's going on in the ovaries, the ovarian cycle, and what's going on with the uterus. So you can see as the primary follicles are developing, you're shedding your endometrium, and as ovulation is nearing, your endometrium, so as ovulation is nearing, the endometrium size is increasing, and should the egg be fertilized, the corpus luteum hangs around, and the endometrium grows thicker and the fertilized egg implants. And I believe that is the end of this lecture. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good evening.